share screen. There. I guess all of you are very anxious to know your exam results. The midterm exam will not be graded until this Friday. Your scores will become available on the grade book, Canvas grade book, okay? Not until Friday. Our TAs are still working very hard. Okay, today's topic is price elasticity of demand and its relations to other important topics. Can you all see the screen here? Obviously, I have not mastered the typing on this PDF file. PED stands for Price Elasticity of Demand. Will be, after some introductory remarks, I will explain 3 types of demand curves and then use Model T as Henry Ford's Model T as an example. And then we'll discuss the various determinants of the price elasticity of demand, and also revenue, the relationship between revenue and the price elasticity of demand, okay? After that, maybe this Wednesday, we will be studying about the price controls, its effect, their effects, their relations to the price elasticity of demand, okay? Okay, what is the price elasticity of demand? Okay, well, before giving the definition, I want to cite a couple of examples to the law of demand. The law of demand says that demand curve is negatively sloped, right? And price elasticity of demand, it's a property of the demand curve, negatively sloped demand curve. As I mentioned before, there are some exceptions, not very common. And this example is called the Giffen good, named after the British economist who noticed about this exception to the law of demand. As I mentioned before, during the Great Famine of Ireland between 1845 and 1852, we saw the famine, Irish potato famine, killed over 1 million men, women, and children, and another 1 million people fled the country. Some went to Europe, others came to the United States. So many Irish people in the United States came from Ireland during that period. About 2/3 of 1 million poor Irish farmers abandoned their country and came to the United States. The majority of the Irish people had little or no land, and the typical Irish houses were 1 room and cabin on natural earth floors made of rocks. There were obviously no windows or chimneys in the winter. And the majority of the Irish land was owned by landlords, absentee landlords who probably lived in the city of London and so on. And they charged land rents, which were in modern standards were very low, but in those days their income was not very much. So annual rent for these stone huts were only £2. In today's value, that would be about $330. And the farmers would be provided with nearby potato gardens, and annual interest rate was 25% for these money lenders. When they're hungry, when they're starving to death, they had to borrow money, and they paid a very high interest. And here is a picture I think I showed you before. These are the type of lodgings or stone huts. There was no heating and so on, and their annual rent was uh, about £2 in those days. And you can still see these ruins of potato famine along the Dingle Peninsula Drive. Now, this Irish potatoes were an example or a counterexample of the law of demand, which these Irish people's behavior was very peculiar. When the price of potato rose, they did not have enough money, so all they were eating were potatoes, and they were buying more potatoes when the price went up. But when the price went down, now they had some breathing space, and they were buying less potato, and they were buying some meat and other luxury items like vegetables and so on. So this was a genuine, this used to be cited as a genuine and the only possible counterexample of the law of demand, until Baruch and Kanai discovered that a similar counterexample was, until they found the counterexample in Japan. These Japanese salarymen or workers did not earn enough money. So when the price of sake, this is the wooden cup or mug of the Japanese people. They probably glass cups, or probably glasses were very expensive and rare. So these Japanese salarymen were drinking lots of sake or soju, which is a kind of cheap whiskey. Alcohol volume, alcohol content is about 25%. Compared to 40% among Scotch whiskeys. Okay, and they noticed that the Japanese workers were drinking more soju when the price went up, because they wanted to get high with as little money as possible. And when the price went down, they bought less soju and bought some, I guess, sashimi or sushi, whatever, other luxurious items. So the Japanese salarymen were also exhibiting consumption behavior, which was a violation of the law of demand. Other than these two counterexamples, we did not find any recent case that violates the law of demand. Now, when we compare demand curves for different products, how do we measure sensitivity of these demands to prices and other relevant variables like income and so on? Well, some people suggest, obviously, the first candidate would be the slopes of demand curves. All of these demand curves being negatively sloped, but slopes are not unit free. So the slope of a demand curve is defined as the change in quantity divided by change in price. So in the United States, that would be so many units, so many ounces per dollar, okay, for instance. But each country uses its own units of measurement. In the United States, we are measuring volumes of liquid in terms of ounces and pounds. Uh, in Europe, they are using kilograms and they are using metric system, right? China uses a different system, which is analogous to the French metric system. So they are measuring weights in terms of gin and so on. Uh, so these slopes cannot directly be used to compare sensitivity of demand, market demand curves in different countries. So economists are using unit-free measurements as follows. Price elasticity of demand is defined as this ratio, this epsilon. It is price elasticity of demand is denoted by epsilon. This is a Greek letter, epsilon. That is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. So since demand curve is negatively sloped, delta Q, change in Q divided by change in P will be always negative. Price and quantity are moving in opposite direction, okay? And we don't like negative numbers. So it has become the custom of economists to put another minus sign so that minus delta Q over delta P would be always a positive number. Then the numerator is divided by Q. That's percentage change in Q divided by percentage change in price. So you can also write this as minus delta Q over delta P, and then you flip Q over P, so you get P over Q, okay? So that is the official or formal definition of the price elasticity of demand. So let's consider its properties. Price elasticity of demand is a unit-free measure. So you can compare the Chinese price elasticity of demand for pork and British elasticity of demand for corn, different products, whatever. We can compare these elasticities of demand, okay? So there are three different types of demand curves. When the price elasticity of demand is greater than 1, we say that the demand is price elastic, or simply demand is elastic, okay? When there is no adjective in front or noun in front acting as an adjective, we mean price elasticity, okay? For other elasticities, we have to be more specific whether we are dealing with elasticity with respect to income changes or price changes. We need to be more specific, okay? When the price elasticity of demand is less than one, we say the demand curve is price inelastic. In means not, okay? Not elastic. When the value of epsilon is exactly equal to 1, we say that demand is unitary price elastic, okay? So here are some extreme cases. In addition to these three types of demand curves, there are two extreme cases. One would be perfectly inelastic demand curve, which is vertical, okay? No matter how much price changes, you don't move. You consume the same amount of good. The quantity does not respond to price changes. This is the case of a perfectly inelastic demand curve. When you're enjoying a beef steak, everybody uses salt and maybe even peppers just because the price of salt declined by 50%, nobody has more. So, wow, the price of salt has declined. Let me sprinkle a little more. No, they don't do that. You just sprinkle as much salt as you desire, regardless of the price change, okay? So this is the case like salt and sugar, etc. Basic uh, condiments, demand curve may be perfectly price inelastic, okay? So here is a case of price inelastic demand. Somebody, Ellis, Martin, and Zhu, estimated the overall demand elasticity for healthcare, and that turned out to be about 0.404. Okay, obviously they did not change the sign, so this is the raw number. Demand curve is negatively sloped, but it's not very elastic. PED, price elasticity of demand, is only 0.44, okay? And they also measured the price elasticities for more narrowly defined products like emergency visits. Price elasticity of demand for emergency care turned out to be only 0.04, meaning, well, that's obvious. Even if the price of treatment is declined by 50%, nobody's going to visit the emergency rooms for emergency hospital care, okay? You cannot fake your sickness or illness. When you become sick, you visit the emergency rooms, right? So demand for such emergency health care turned out to be very, very price inelastic, almost vertical, okay? So here is when the price elasticity of demand is less than 1, we say demand is price inelastic. Here is another example of price inelastic demand curve. Say demand for coffee. Many Americans enjoy coffee in the morning. Some people drink 1 cup, 2 cups, 3 cups, whatever. And they are, just because coffee price declined by 50%, you don't double your consumption of coffee. You can consume so much per day or each morning, okay? So when price goes down, high quality coffee goes down, you may consume a little bit more, but that change in quantity demanded may not be that much, okay? So this coffee, sugar, salt, etc., these products are cases of price inelastic demand curve. And there are unit elastic demand curve. I'm not implying that this demand curve for women's handbag is unitary price inelastic. But unitary price elastic demand curve is a rectangular hyperbola, meaning price times Q is always the same. Okay, in other words, once you pick a point along the demand curve, you can generate a rectangle, okay, price times Q, which is revenue. That rectangle does not change along this unitary price elastic demand curve, okay? So when does that happen? Well, sometimes parents, especially parents, have to economize their expenditures. They need to budget their consumption in advance, and they allocate 10% of their budget on food consumption or weekend leisure activities, etc. They don't want to spend any more money beyond the allocated budget, in which case, yeah, when the price goes down, you consume however much you need until until your budget is exhausted, okay? When price goes up, well, that's too bad. You need to cut down your consumption and making sure that your expenditure on that category is fixed. 10% of the budget is allocated for educational purposes or leisure purposes. Uh, a fixed amount of money is always spent on in that category of consumption goods, okay? That's the case of unitary elastic demand curve. Many demand curves are very price elastic. They tend to be luxury goods, and they tend to be price elastic. These products would include jewelry, fur coats, sports cars. If price drops, Lexus car, well, wow, that's great. That's an expensive car. If price goes down, consumption of such luxury goods may increase suddenly. Okay, so that's the case of price elastic demand curve. When the price of this product goes down by only 10% and quantity demanded increases by more than 10%. Okay, in this example, 20% demand is price elastic. In this case, price elasticity of demand would be 20% divided by 10%, which would be 2. So how do you actually measure the price elasticity of demand? Here is an example how not to measure price elasticity of demand. So let's consider two situations. In the initial situation, the price of a product was $20 and you consume 100 units. Later, price is halved, price plummets to $10 and consumption doubles, okay? So percentage change in quantity demanded is 200 minus 100 divided by initial quantity, which is 100. Okay, that would be 100 divided by 100, which is 1. That's 1. Percentage change in price is price dropped by 10 units. Initial price was 20, so that is 1/2. So 1 divided by 1/2 is 2 after correcting the minus sign. Now let's, the next day the situation was reversed. So percentage change in quantity demanded is minus 100 divided by 200, okay, which is 1/2. And the percentage change in price is 20 minus 10, which is 10 divided by initial price of 10, which is 1. So when the price is going up, price elasticity of demand seems to be 1/2 or half. Well, we were changing price in the same price range, and you cannot have two different price elasticities of demand. So this is called the point method. Using the initial price and output as basis, you get different numbers, okay? So we correct this problem by using the midpoint method. So this is all empirically accepted method, midpoint method. How do you do that? Percentage change in quantity demanded, where instead of using initial output and initial price as the basis, why don't we use the average of the quantities, average quantity and average price? In this case, instead of 100 units or 200 units, we are using the average, which is 150. Instead of using price $10 or $20, we're using average price, which is 15. In this case, we obtain the correct price elasticity of demand, which is equal to 1, okay? So for empirical studies, dealing with small price, dealing with large price changes, say less than 10%, we would be using the midpoint method, okay? Let's consider the a special case, empirical example of Model T. In about 100 years, 115 years ago, average automobiles in the United States were quite expensive. They were not mass produced. There were a bunch of mechanics, expert mechanics, and all these automobiles were handcrafted. Obviously, because you have to pay for their expert skills. So the price of automobiles were very high at the turn of the last century, okay? And then Henry Ford visited Iowa butcher shops and noticed that Iowa farmers were using assembly lines. One guy would be killing or cutting the carcass vertically, just one line, okay, one vertical line, and using a very sharp sword. The next guy picks it up and then split them into 4 different parts, etc. And then at the end of the assembly line, you would be packaging these cut meats. Some consumers want bones and others want steaks, etc., in different parts. So these are sent to grocery stores, okay? And Henry Ford got this idea, why don't we build an assembly line? So he began to produce. Everybody was specializing in a particular task, and the production of Henry Ford's Model T increased quite a bit. So he introduced Model T in 1909, and here is a picture of Model T. So what happened to the demand for US automobiles? In 1909, the price of automobile was $900. In those days, in today's price, probably this may have gone up to maybe $10,000 in today's price. But anyway, in 5 years, the price dropped to 440, price declined by 50%. And lo and behold, quantity demanded was initially 58,000 cars. It increased to 472,000 cars. So demand for Model T increased. Demand for Model T was very, very price elastic. And he was making a small amount of money for each car sold, but he was selling so many cars, so Henry Ford's Model T was enormously successful. Okay, what are the determinants of the price elasticity of demand? There are several factors that determine the magnitudes of the price elasticities of demand. So the number one determinant would be the existence or availability of substitutes. If there are close substitutes, you cannot really raise the price, because the moment you raise the price a little bit, most of your consumers will be switching to another brand. So a good example would be Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola. Okay, I don't know about you, but in a blindfold test, I cannot tell whether this is Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola. I don't really care that much. So when I go to buy soft drinks, I just pick one whichever is cheaper. And I'm sure many of you probably exhibit similar behavior, okay? So when when there are close they may not be perfect substitutes, but when they are close substitutes, uh, when you raise the price a little bit, even 10 cents, consumers may be switching to the other brand, okay? So demand for Coca-Cola, for which a very close substitute exists, is very price elastic. But demand for salt is price inelastic. There is no substitute for salt, okay? There are no good substitutes. Well, maybe you can sprinkle more hot peppers. That may satisfy some people, but not all others. So demand for salt tend to be price inelastic. And many firms are trying to come up with sugar substitute. Some of them are successful, and still others are not satisfied with salt, sugar substitutes. How about surgery, like appendectomy? No, if you're sick, you have to go to the hospital and have your surgeon remove your appendix. Band-Aid is not going to be a substitute. There are no substitutes for this kind of surgery, brain surgery, appendectomy, Caesar section, etc. There are no good substitutes. So their demand for these services tend to be very, very price inelastic, okay? Number two, budget share. When budget share is high, like automobiles for poor families, per capita GDP of the United States is about $60,000. When typical car price is $30,000, well, that would consume half of your annual budget. Well, in that case, demand for automobiles is going to be quite price elastic, okay? Price goes down quite a bit, price of automobiles goes down, well, then you could buy more. The price goes up a little bit, consumption tends to be very sensitive, such price changes. Education tend to be price elastic. In private schools in the East, Ivy colleges, annual tuition is over $70,000. You add the living expense, that would easily top $100,000. And demand for quality education is very price elastic. So many Iowa parents go for Iowa State. Well, some people say Harvard, MIT, and so on, Brown University have more prestigious education. Well, if you're going to be picky, maybe that, and if you can afford that, that would be okay. I mean, it's your money you're spending. So who's going to criticize how you spend your money? So we can't criticize them. But many Iowa parents find it useful to send their kids, to send their children to Iowa State because, come on, principles of economics taught at Harvard University is better. I mean, how do they teach you different microeconomic theories? No, they are teaching the same microeconomic theory, okay? How do they teach better mathematics, better linear algebra? No, they are teaching the same linear algebra, same mathematics. We're not, Harvard, MIT, and Iowa State University do not teach different mathematics. They are teaching the same mathematics as you would be learning in a faraway country, faraway planet, exoplanet somewhere, if they have intelligent beings, they're going to teach the same math, same economics. Well, maybe not all, but demand elasticity, they will be teaching same price elasticity of demand, okay? So demand for education tends to be price elastic. You more or less get the same teaching, same courses, but at lower cost, and education tends to be price elastic, okay? More time, if consumers are given more time, well, then obviously uh, you will be looking for cheaper price in different parts of the city, or you can even cross the border, Canadian border, to buy an uh, uh, Canadian pickles, which are very good. I hear you can travel there and then bring them pickles and so on. If they are given more time, obviously they will find more substitutes, okay? So time is an important determinant of demand, price elasticity of demand, okay? Uh, long run and short run demand curves. So demand curves in the short run and long run are different. Uh, Usually the airlines, I'm sure sometime next year, situation, our uh, situation, economic situation may revert back to the normal uh, scenario when consumers will be again flying to different countries, different cities. Uh, but in in the short run, airlines know your short-run demand and long-run demand curves are different. So they discriminate consumers. You're flying to New York City. Why? Why? Well, you don't have to know. You cannot ask consumers why and then charge higher or lower prices. They know you are flying on Monday and coming back on Wednesday. Wow, that's great. You must you must be a business traveler. Okay, so for business travelers, they charge higher prices, and for other students, you are flying on weekends. Well, maybe you are visiting. Maybe the semester is over during Thanksgiving, so your demand for flights may be very sensitive. Their demand for uh, flights is very sensitive. So some of our students flew back to China already, uh, and are watching these videotapes online. Okay, so firms distinguish short-run and long-run demand curves and charge prices accordingly. Okay, demand for flights, uh, short-run demand is very price inelastic. You must be flying because you're going to the funeral of someone dear to you, etc. You're going to pay through your nose, and they know that they are charging higher prices, okay? Next, consider the relationship between revenue and the price elasticity of demand. Here's a painting, a very famous painting by Grant Wood. The title of this painting is American Gothic. And I think this painting represents the farm life in US agriculture. And this barn behind these two farmers is actually this is not created out of some flimsy imagination, but this bond actually exists in the city of Eldon. I have never been there, but I think it's very close to Ames. So this shows the farm life maybe 100, 200 years ago. And why am I talking about farmers? Farmers are making production decisions around in November. They need to make rent decision. Am I going to increase the amount of plot, rent more or buy more land, etc.? They are making these decisions before planting. And in the spring, you have to plant all kinds of seeds, whether you're going to plant corn this year or soybean this year, etc. You have to make planting decisions in advance. And in September or October is the harvesting season, and by that time your production decisions would have been made already. All the production decisions have been made already. The only remaining production decision is being careful when harvesting your products. Okay, so and there's little you can do. When you just have to be careful when harvesting. You cannot increase your harvest or decrease harvest because price goes up and down. No, unless your harvest is ruined, like in many parts of Japan and maybe in California somewhere. I'm not sure, because of the wildfire. Many houses are being burned, but maybe some farmers, almond farmers, output are destroyed. I don't know. But whatever they do, production decisions had been made already. So all you care about is revenue. How much revenue is going to, are you going to acquire? Are you going to get? Revenue is P times Q. And let me introduce this percentage change notation. Ideally, this hat in front of X should be on top of your head, okay, over. This hat, correct notation should be on top of X. X, American man wearing a hat or cap, whatever. This, but in HTML language, you can't do that. So I have to create a graphic image, or you have to learn lots of tricks to make sure that this hat sits on top of the variable X. I don't have that much skill. So I'm going to put hat in front of a variable, okay? To mean delta X over X. That is the percentage change in X. So when revenue is the product of two variables, price and output, percentage change in hat is, pay close attention, okay? I'm gonna say this only once. Percentage change in R is percentage change in price plus percentage change in output. Did you get it? Percentage change in R is the sum of percentage changes in P and percentage change in Q. Okay, obviously this formula works for small changes like less than 10%. If percentage changes were very large, then the formula does not work. When the percentage change in price is 10% and percentage change in quantity demanded is 10%, the product percentage change in revenue involves another term that is the product of delta P and delta Q. When they are very small amount times another small amount is going to be much smaller, so we simply ignore it, okay? So if you factor out percentage change in P, you get 1 plus delta percentage change in Q divided by percentage change in P, which can be written as the price elasticity of demand, okay? So the important thing is not the derivation in between. Percentage change in revenue is percentage change in price times 1 minus epsilon. When demand is price inelastic, meaning epsilon is less than 1, this term is positive. So that means percentage change in revenue and percentage change in price are going to move in the same direction. If price goes up, when demand is price inelastic, when price goes up, revenue follows suit. That's all you have to memorize today. When demand is price elastic, like coffee, demand for sugar, etc., demand for which demand price elasticity of demand is less than 1. In that case, price and revenue move in the same direction. Okay, so that would be this case. When demand is price inelastic, when price goes up, you're going to lose some quantity demanded, okay? You're losing some, but you're going to lose a little bit. But this percentage change in price dominates the percentage change in quantity demanded. So you're going to be on top, okay? So percentage changes in price or quantity are denoted by these blue and red arrows. So when this arrow, percentage change in quantity demand is, when demand is price inelastic, price and quantity are moving in the opposite direction, but this red arrow is going to be a short guy. This is going to be shorter than this blue arrow, okay? So the net effect is going to be a small decrease in revenue, okay? This is the case of inelastic demand curve. Price and revenue move in the same direction, okay? That's this case. In the other case, when demand is price elastic, last year, price of truck, pickup trucks declined somewhat, declined a little bit, a few $1,000s. And all of a sudden demand for these pickup trucks increased quite a bit. There are good reasons. The price of gasoline is so low. During the early period of Obama administration, price of gasoline topped $4 per gallon. Now in some places it's less than $3. No, maybe even around $2. So demand for this gas guzzling pickup trucks increased quite a bit. Okay, that's this case. When demand is price elastic, remember, whether it is price elastic or inelastic, price and output are always moving in opposite direction. Okay, when demand is price elastic, this upward arrow, percentage change in quantity demanded, is going to be taller than this short arrow representing the percentage change in price. So the net effect is going to be percentage change in quantity demand is going to dominate move over. I'm the dominant portion, and the revenue as a result goes up. Okay, that's the case of price elastic demand curve, and that's what Henry Ford discovered. He did not anticipate it, but he did not know how price elastic demand for Model T would be, and he cut the price by 50%, and there was a huge response, eruption, total eruption of Americans' demand for Model T. Okay, and that from then on until then, Henry Ford was a small automobile company, and now it is competing with GM. And when demand is unitary price elastic, percentage change in price and percentage change in quantity demanded, they are of equal length and nothing happens to revenue. Okay, so this is the case when uh, the person in charge of family budget, usually mother, well, we need to be very careful. I have allocated 10% for our leisure activity. So instead of going far away to the foreign country this year, let's drive around Iowa or someplace close. Because in addition to the actual expenditure, you have to spend extra money to protect your families. You have to be extra careful. Okay, all these extra expenses you have to incur. These expenditures are associated with COVID virus, etc. Okay, so when the mother allocates a fixed amount of money, we're going to spend only 10% for entertainment, and our family members have to do with their budget. Okay, in this case, the expenditure is fixed, and that's the case of unitary price elastic demand curve. Okay, today that's going to be the end of it. Okay, we'll continue on Wednesday. Okay, any questions? Well, that's it for today. I will see you on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be around if you have questions. All right, that's it for today.